Hello everyone, welcome to the Call of Duty DraftKings DFS Slate breakdown for March 31st. We have the second set of LAN matches throughout this season. We are at Major 2 back on LAN up in Minnesota. So we have some things to talk about. I'm looking forward to this one a good bit. I actually think it's a decent bit wide open. I guess quickly, kind of before we get into exactly talking about these games and stuff, slate by slate, a couple things to get talk about. Number one, I'm still looking for the creator of the prize picks. It's titled Spreadsheet. If you guys know anything, just let me know. Give me a comment to me, something on Twitter. I'd love to get into contact with them and get permission and all that stuff. Make sure everything is fine. I just got a couple DMs about it and saying, I should give credit and, this and that. But for some reason, nobody responded to me when I said, who is this? Or like, whose is this? I'd like to get credit on that stuff. I'm not sure why. It's been a whole thing, but yeah. Number one, let me know if you guys do know that by chance. Number two, quickly before we get into talking these games game by game, I want to kind of talk about what I expect for this Major 2 as a whole. And you guys can kind of get a read of how I'm thinking about these teams overall. So I want to get started kind of with a tier list. So starting off with S tier, I think these are teams that are most likely going to win the tournament, and these are my title contenders. I think obviously we're going to start with Optic, Atlanta, and I'm going to put London in here as well. I'm actually expecting kind of big things from London here. I think they're kind of flowing a little bit under the radar. I think it's just because they had like a little bit of a slow set of qualifiers in match 2 because they had like the Gizmo situation where he was like subbed out and stuff, but they only lost to FaZe, and I think this was actually somewhat close. So their results weren't necessarily that inspiring, but I'm actually kind of back on them a little bit. I think they might be a little bit undervalued in terms of being able to like win this tournament. I do think they're kind of a little bit of a long shot, but I think they are going to be my pick to win the Major 2. I think I'm going to go with London. I think they've been pretty impressive with a lot of the things lately, and I think Atlanta, FaZe, and Optic Texas haven't been necessarily looking at 100%, and I think if there was going to be a time for them, I think this would be it. Number 2, the A tier, I guess. This is just kind of like pretty good teams, maybe like a long shot to win the major, but I don't really see it happening. I think these are just like decent teams, and I think I'm actually just going to go with these two for Boston and Florida. I just think that they've shown a little bit more consistency and skill, and I think specifically for Boston, I think they actually have a little bit more upside. I think the like control changes have been helping them. I think they've been finding their groove a little bit more. I do have some concerns that maybe this is like a little bit too quick for them. I feel like they went from like a middling team to like a pretty good team pretty quickly. I think they ended 4-1. I think they did lose to London towards the end of the year, of the qualifiers at least. And I think this just seems like a right spot for them. I do think they are fourth. I do have these in mind going from like left to right. So I do think Optic is 1, FaZe is 2, and so on. So keep that in mind. I am going to have these in order of who I think is better, but I still think the tiers are a little bit more clear. For this B tier, I'm going for a little bit more of just kind of average middling teams. I think they're, to simply put it, I just think they're worse than the teams above them, and they're better than the teams below them. For that, I'm going to go with Seattle. I'm going to put Seattle in A tier, actually. I think they're kind of a little slept on as well. For B tier, I honestly don't know if I'd have anybody in the B tier. I'd maybe just have Toronto. I think they just have so many problems of themselves as well. I'd put New York here. I'd probably put New York above Toronto. For my mental notes, I kind of only really had the top 5 here, and the rest were kind of up in the air. But this makes sense to me. I just think they're kind of decent and stuff. This is where I think LAG would be if they didn't have the substitute. I don't know if you guys are aware or not, but Gunless is sick. I don't remember if they released exactly what it was. My memory says it's like stomach ulcers or something. Um, pretty drastic for him. So hopefully everything gets better with him. Much love to him. Pretty cool guy in the scene. So that sucks. They do have Spark coming in. And wow, LAG did look relatively decent recently when they played against Optic. With Spart, they're going to have some level of practice coming into this. You know what? I'm actually going to put him here. I'll put him in B tier at the bottom there. I do think, again, I'm going to favor them over these bottom three teams. I'd probably put LA over, I don't know, something like that. I guess quickly finishing my thoughts on the LAG one. I do think they actually looked pretty decent. It does hurt when you lose Gunless and you're picking up a challengers players with Spart. I think they actually look pretty decent again against Optic. They're going to have some time to get situated there. It does feel very doomed for them. I mean, I do have them as a bottom four team, but I think the rest of their players have been playing better. I think they do have some upside still. I think you could argue having them over Toronto, but it seems a little early. The bottom tiers is kind of bad teams. They haven't shown much. Not much really to break down here. I think LA Thieves obviously have just completely in turmoil. Like, it feels like roster changes are imminent. It seems like they've already kind of given up there a little bit. Paris, they've been looking better, but it still feels like a long shot. And it feels like they're just kind of a step behind everyone. I do think that geez, sorry, my throat's already given out. I haven't been talking in a while. There's kind of a long shot still. Like, I do think they've had some success. They've looked a little bit better in some spots, but I just can't get over like how bad their comms sound when they do listen-ins, and all the small stuff just feels like it's so against them. I do think they do have some upside as players. I think, I'm actually going to move them back up here. I think you could argue that they're maybe even better than Toronto or than LAG. But I'll leave them there. I think this is pretty fine. I think there's been going to be some upside there. I do worry again. Jimbo's first LAN. I don't know if it's his first LAN necessarily, but it's his first one this year. I don't know. I just don't have a lot of high hopes. I mean, we are talking about again the bottom three teams here. LA Thieves and Minnesota. You could kind of take what I'm about to say and apply it to both of them. It feels like they've both kind of already given up. They're expecting roster changes. They have not looked good at all lately. They don't even really have much like saving grace. They don't have much to like build off of, really, it feels like. But it just feels like they're both kind of packing it in. And I think in esports and mainly Call of Duty, when your mental's not there, that's kind of like the number one thing and the first thing that goes like in terms of skill. So this is going to be kind of my expectation or skill level here for the major. I'm pretty excited to see a lot of these teams, a lot of these games and stuff, but this is how I break it down. S tier, I think, are title challengers, competitors, people who are most likely to win the tournament. A is going to be people like right behind them, but not quite there yet. B tier, I think, is maybe some level wild card, but I just don't see it in terms of beating the other teams above them. And for C tier, you could honestly have an argument, I think, for putting Paris at the end of B tier. I don't think that would be crazy at all. But I think for now, I don't think they'd consistently be able to beat LA Thieves in Minnesota, for example. So I'll leave it like this, and I just think this is makes sense for me. So keep in mind that going forward, this is kind of how I'm viewing these teams and these games and stuff. So yeah, that'll be what I'm looking at for today. Whoops. So quickly we can kind of talk about the game, start getting to talk about the games. So I actually did kind of like write down the picks and bans and stuff beforehand. Again, just because I don't want to pull up the that price pick spreadsheet on video. Just because there's a lot of like more sensitive information, I guess, in there that people have been telling me not to show. So until I get like credit and stuff, I don't want to, step on toes again. So jeez. Yeah, we'll get going with there. So there's not a lot really to like go through a lot. Mainly what it comes down to is Cage Watch. You guys have probably heard me drone on and on about this. I don't really need to touch on it anymore, but we need bocage. We just need a lot of bocage, a lot of bocage. We just need the cage. For DraftKings scoring, it matters so much. I do think there has been some decent scoring output from other instances, but I think mainly the upside that the cage presents is just way too much to pass on. And I guess this format is a little poor, so we can go through it still series by series. So for Florida versus London, Florida is expected to ban either Tuscan or Berlin, and then if they win the control coin flip, they'll both go Gavutu. London will ban Bocage. It's been their perma ban. Jeez, my throat's already gone for some reason. For LAG Boston, I think LAG is most likely going to ban the Bocage, but although they've been banning the Gavutu as well. For Boston, they've been banning either the Tuscan or the Gavutu. I guess we could look at Breaking Point to get a little bit more of an idea of like stats or what we can expect maybe. So looking over at the team stats for Florida, London, right next to each other. Actually, I like these over here. So Florida, London, as you guys could see, Florida's really only been winning on the Bocage, and we know London's going to ban it out. They've been playing a lot of the other maps better. So when we look at Florida versus London, London's going to ban Bocage. Florida will either ban Tuscan or Berlin. Neither of these are really better. I guess maybe you would argue that they should ban the Tuscan, but both of these are like they're decent or like the same for London, and they're both pretty bad for Florida. I don't. Yeah, so we know London's going to ban Bocage. Florida's probably going to ban Tuscan. So that's the two best hardpoint maps out of the rotation right away. So initially, I'm just not loving this series at all, or that much. Look for pricing maybe. I mean, Afro's simply mispriced. I mean, London is way too cheap, I think, here. I wonder what they are in the money line. They're minus 230. That seems normal to me. They're a good bit favored in the respawn game modes. So yeah, I mean, I like London. They're pretty cheap here. I think they're definitely fine at this price tag. In terms of players, I'm actually not entirely sure. We'll have to maybe look at that like in a map by map basis. When it comes to the control, I mean, I guess we will know the maps for the series as usual. The first series will have the maps released to us in advance. So, I expect it to be the Berlin Gavutu. If Tuscan sneaks in, that'll help out a little bit for sure with London. I think this is probably just going to be a wait and see scenario. If we do have a really good veto coming out for London, like if they do end up on Tuscan hardpoint, I mean, it's probably going to be Tuscan Gavutu or Gavutu Berlin. So, for example, if the vetoes come out, I'll tweet this out, and you guys can look for it yourselves. But a hypothetical pick and ban is if maps 1, 2, and 3 are Gavutu, or it wouldn't be 1, 2, and 3, it'd be 1, 3, 4. I mean, but if we do get like a Tuscan hardpoint and a Gavutu control, like those are really, really good there for London. A good upside, and for them in those respawns, I'd be fine with playing at London if those are the maps. If it does end up in like a Berlin hardpoint with a Tuscan control, I would probably be a little bit more keen to just kind of leave this series off or go lighter with London. Again, I'm pretty fine with their players. I like their players a lot. Specifically Afro, he's pretty underpriced. I think he's been playing like really, really good for them lately. At 7,600, I think you should probably, I don't know. Lock seems agree like too intense, really. Like, I don't think it's that crazy, but he's simply mispriced. He's probably their best player on a decent sized favorite. He's 7,600. He's pretty cheap. I think if you do even want to kind of avoid this series, I think just putting him in as a one-off, kind of like a value piece, makes a lot of sense. I think he has good 130 even point upside. At this price tag, it seems a little crazy. Gizmo at 84 makes sense. Nesty at 9 is a little pricey, but I think that's still fine. We look at pricing, or we look at how they've been performing lately. We'll look at player stats later, but again, picks and bans, we'll see it. So we'll probably just have to wait and adapt. But again, if it does come out London favored and they do get Tuscan hardpoint, Gavutu control, Gavutu hardpoint, I think they're strong on all those maps, have a good chance to win all those respawns, and they could really rack up points that way. If it's kind of middling, then I might just go to a little bit lighter approach, and if it's really bad, I might just resort to only playing like Afro one-offs and calling it there. I really can't see getting to Florida here. I do think Florida is a decent team. I'm going to look to them in the future, but not in this spot. They do seem relatively cheap as also, but I don't think there's much upside on either side, again, because I expect the Bocage is going to be banned. We know that's London's ban. It just doesn't seem like it's great upside there. There's other spots I want to get to. So we'll probably call it there for that one. Los Angeles Guerrillas versus Boston. This one's probably going to be pretty one-sided. Again, LAG have a substitute, so it's just tough for them. Boston has actually been kind of flipping what they've been good in lately. If you guys remember when I talked about LA Thieves and why kind of they were struggling, I feel like it loosely applied here to Boston. I felt like Boston was focusing a little bit less on their hardpoint practice and more in their search and destroy and the control. Because they were so good in hardpoint, they needed to focus on other stuff. It definitely makes sense. I don't blame them at all for that. But it felt like their hardpoint wasn't as dominant as it was at one point, and it kind of slipped a little bit. So I don't feel that crazy comfortable with Boston here. Look at their price tags. I wonder where they're at. Methods is 84. His price is coming up a little. Teej is 72. I don't love these Boston price tags. I really don't. So looking at the picks and bans, I do have LAG probably banning the Bocage. That's what they've been banning as of late. And we know Boston like to play that map, so it would just make a lot more sense for LAG, I think, to ban the Bocage. It does give Boston the chance to go to Gavutu, which they've been pretty good on. I would expect Boston to go to the Tuscan. So again, we have probably another series where we have the Bocage ban and the Tuscan ban. We do go to the Berlin and the Gavutu, I think most likely. LAG will go to the Berlin. I think Boston will go to the Gavutu. For the controls, Boston's been banning whatever. Like the last 3 series, I think they've banned something different. So when it comes to controls, so I just kind of put question marks here. I wasn't too sure. LAG typically bans the Tuscan. I think Boston's fine on the Gavutu. I don't know. For the controls, it kind of feels like it's a coin flip, but I'm fine with it either way. I think the changes and stuff just kind of help Boston for the control. And again, they're going up against a lesser team with a substitute in for Gunless. They're having, again, Spark coming in. I do think, again, Spark's maybe a little, like, I think people are going to over exaggerate this maybe a little. I think he's fine. I'm going to look forward to them maybe in a later avenue. We'll see who they're playing if they lose this. I think it just goes like this. So LAG will play Toronto. I think LAG could win that. Florida will play Paris. I think Florida will win that. So I'm looking to these losing teams to bounce back maybe the next day. We'll talk about that when we get there. Obviously, we're not sure who's going to be there even. But, yeah, I like Boston. I like them a good bit here. It's just tough. These price tags are not great, and the maps are really not great. Again, I expect LAG to ban the Bocage. It would make a lot more sense. I expect Boston to ban the Tuscan that's been their permaban. So we're going to Berlin, Gavutu. The controls are not that great either. We'll look at player stats in a second, or later when we have our teams kind of picked out. But I'm feeling pretty light on this series as well. Methods, he's been pretty good. 84, that's definitely affordable. He seems a little mispriced as well. Teed at 72, I think that's fine as well. I don't know, like they make sense. I think they're probably going to be relatively popular as well. I just don't love it. Their prices just feel a little inflated to me. Atlanta, New York. So this one's going to be super intriguing overall because I think this one's a little closer than minus 900. I know Atlanta's a title challenger and stuff. I just talked about why I think they're a very, very good team. They have an upside to win the tournament and stuff. Minus 900 feels like you need like a lock, and I feel like this is gonna be somewhat close. Is it gonna change my opinion? Not really. So we're just gonna look at these three maps where Pollux has been playing. There's no reason to look at back when they were pretty much a different team, But FaZe versus New York, I'm pretty excited for this one. So again, I think it's going to be a pretty action-packed game. I've been impressed with New York comeback. Sucks they get stuck with FaZe in the first round here, but I'm still looking forward to it. And again, this kind of brings up what I was just talking about, the cage watch here on Bocage. I expect there to be a pretty solid chance they get to the cage in this one. So all three series that New York has played with this lineup of Neptune, Paul, Hydra, Krim, they've been going to the cage a good bit, and they've only banned Tuscan Hardpoint. FaZe are fine with that. They permaban Berlin. So we're looking at a Bocage and a Gavutu, most likely. I think these maps are actually somewhat fine for New York. My hesitancy here is they've played Toronto, Minnesota, and Paris. And if you guys remember my tier list, I had all three of those teams pretty low down. That's kind of the hesitancy here with New York. I would actually kind of be for pulling the trigger with New York here as like I don't necessarily think an upside pick or an upset pick against FaZe. I think FaZe should probably win this series like pretty often. But from a DraftKings perspective, New York is really cheap, especially Neptune at 6, Hydra at 7-8, maybe Paul at 6-4, but I think that's stretching it. I think those duo subs of Hydra and Neptune have been pretty killer lately. I like them a lot. It's just they're such big underdogs, and I've talked about this many, many times. If your team gets swept, your lineup gets swept also. There's serious potential here. But here's the thing. Again, we have the cage. That's a check mark in the box of New York. We have their super, super cheap price tags. And I think these games are going to be somewhat close. This line feels pretty disrespectful to me. Again, I do have New York as a favorite, but probably like minus 400, minus 500. Not minus 900. Like, I would not be shocked if New York ended up taking a map here. And I think that's kind of what we're asking for, is New York to win a map, have some decent individual scores, pay off these super cheap price tags. I think it makes sense. But the problem is I really also want to play the FaZe guys, but their price tags are so ridiculous themselves. I don't know. Like, here's the thing. Like, I do like London. They're the favorite, relatively chalky. I like Boston. They're the favorite, relatively chalky also. Do I just want to kind of say screw it and go with New York and hope New York has like a really good Bocage and FaZe's scores are not able to recover? I'm honestly not that opposed to it. Again, I think they're pretty cheap. Especially, I would probably limit myself to just Hydra and Neptune. I don't think I'd get crazy with a Paul, but maybe in a lineup. I'm not sure. The main reason again here for this is They're gigantic favorites, Bocage upside. And again, we have a really big tournament. This is something I kind of forgot to mention earlier. But we have a first, like, pretty big size DraftKings tournament here. So the 15K Major 2, 5K to first. It is a $15 entry fee. So pretty, I don't know. I don't want to say affordable. It's, for a 5K to first, $15 entry is not that crazy. Only have to beat 1,100 people. It's not that crazy of a tournament. I wonder what the pricing. Man, that's super top heavy. That is a disgusting payout structure. All the money's going to first. Okay, so that's something to keep in mind again if you guys are playing this tournament. I know this is kind of like typically not what I talk about when it comes to this stuff, but I think it is pretty important information, especially if I'm trying to make you guys like profitable DFS players. I would probably avoid this tournament as much as you can. I mean, I typically don't like to play this style of tournament anyway, but when you have third place is a fifth of first, like a third of the prize pool is going to first place, that is pretty gross. Like, if you are playing in this tournament, you need to get really weird, probably really creative. I think doing something like a New York stack would be fine in this tournament because you're just kind of shooting for that spot up top. You're shooting for first. You want to box out as much of the field as possible. You want to get super amounts of leverage. I'm probably going to end up doing that. I think for my approach here, I'm just going to say screw it. I'm just going to go with New York. If they get swept, then they get swept, and so do I. We move on to the next day. I think Atlanta's fine. They're pretty safe. I think if you do want to get something with Atlanta, I wonder if you can do, let's see, or I guess Optic, kind of cheap. Not really. London, Boston. We did like T. Jaffro. Not even close, really. Kind of onto something, maybe. I think there maybe is some stack upside there for Atlanta, New York, because I do think Atlanta is going to win the series. I just think, again, New York is so cheap. Neptune at 6, he's been one of the best players all in the whole league in the last like 3 matches when they've made the change and stuff. So that doesn't seem that crazy to me. I don't know if I necessarily recommend it that often, but it kind of makes sense here. Again, it's just tough. Like, the odds that Atlanta's like the number 1 scoring team and then you get enough from New York on the way back is pretty low. In a 4-game stack like this, I probably wouldn't recommend it. My approach on this one is probably just going to be, I'm going to probably attack with New York, probably go with Hydra and Neptune. I might have one like dart throw with super stacking New York and maybe they get a big upset or something and add in Paul X as well maybe. But they check enough of the boxes here. They're super cheap. They're going to be like my one underdog or like stand on the day. I'm just going to go with New York players, hope they don't get swept, and put up enough points to pay off that price tag. That's kind of what I'm hoping for. And that brings us to the final one, Seattle versus Optic. Pick and ban. I think Seattle's probably going to ban. Here, we could look at this. Look at it this way. So they did play recently. Optic did get the 3-1, I believe. Yep, they did. This is actually a relatively close series as well, but the big difference here, I think, is Optic is just so much better in so many of these game modes. Like, Optic, I think, has been looking so dominant and so oppressive lately. They've had a lot of big performances from even their lesser 2 players. I say that in kind of air quotes with Illy and Scump. Scump especially has been stepping it up. I've been super impressed with a lot of these Optic performances lately. It's going to be super tough to get away from them. I wonder what they are on the betting market. Yeah, they are minus 400. This is a pretty gross slate. We do have a lot of big favorites. So maybe that's one thing to keep in mind as well. But I like Optic and all these respawns. I do like against Seattle going forward. I'm probably going to like them tomorrow. We'll have to look at that, when we get there. But in terms of maps, I expect Optic's been banning Berlin, I believe. That would make sense. That's a pretty good map for Seattle. So I think Optic's probably going to ban the Berlin. Seattle's been banning either Gavutu or Berlin, or looks like they both actually banned Gavutu Berlin. Um, and again, I think that makes sense. I think Seattle should ban the Gavutu. So this is what we talked about last time when they played, is Optic versus Seattle. The picks and bans are really, really nice here for this series. I wonder if it's here. There we go. So last time they played, we got some really, really good performances from, I mean, we had the good maps, but here's the thing. Optic got really, really heavily outslated on this Bocage. I don't expect that to happen again. This seems definitely like an anomaly, but I think the point that we're talking about here is the maps. They played the Cage, Bocage, their map one. They had the Tuscan, they had the Tuscan, so this is the dream map scenario. Like if you could have a DFS, map pick any maps you want for DraftKings purposes, this series is most likely going to have it. It should be the Bocage, the Bocage, the Tuscan, and then probably the Tuscan again. Maybe Optic will try to get to the Gavutu control, but I think either way for the hard points, we're going to have the Bocage, we're going to have the Tuscan, and I think Optic have been kind of peaking at the right time here again. I do kind of worry. Like, I don't want to just pick them to, like, repeat again, but it is possible. Like, it happens, I do worry a little bit about this Seattle team. I do think they have some secret, like, kind of sneaky upside here to, like, win series. I do have them as, like, a pretty decent team. I just don't know if it's their time. It kind of feels like going with Optic side here. This is going to be where all my, like, spend up money goes. We'll look at players. We could just do that now, I guess, because we're towards the end. But Scump at 86, Dashy at 9.4. Shotzi's a little pricey, but mainly Dashy and Scump have been a lot better lately. Illy at 78 makes some sense, but we'll talk about that. I don't like that page. Go to the advanced one, I guess. So we're probably just going to look at Major 2. I mean, that's 5 qualifiers. That's what we've just got off of playing. That makes sense. For teams, Boston, London. We'll throw New York in there, and then Texas. So we can see Methods has been performing incredibly lately. We see, toward the top end for the top 5, I think, kind of separating themselves. We have Methods as a good bit above everyone, then Dashy's like a good bit above everyone else. Then we do have like Afro, Scump, Capsule, Shotzi's there, Hydra, Tej is there. I think I'm fine with like all these players. Again, Neptunes feel a little disrespectful. I feel like he's been playing better in the like last 3 series. We could look and see how Neptune's been playing. I don't know what I just typed to do that, but New York. So in the series that they've been winning, Neptune had a +12. They beat Toronto pretty good. +16. They beat Minnesota good. +11. They beat Paris. So he's been playing pretty well. As you guys can see, it's been Neptune and Hydra. Neptune and Hydra. Some Paulex there, some Paulex here, but that's why I kind of like those guys. I like the way they're looking. Those numbers feel a little rough on that outlook. I mean, we noted those methods and Afro numbers earlier. They seemed a little mispriced. Dashy seems pretty affordable at 9.4. I like Scump's 8.6. That seems fine. Illy's a little far down there. Let's go team by team. That way we can have that picture. So London first series up. Again, we talked about Afro, Gizmo 0, and Nasty. Yeah, I think no matter what the pick and bans come out for this one, I'm probably just going to end up leaving this alone, or maybe I'll have Afro as a lot of one-offs. I mean, maybe you can get to some Gizmo. He does seem to be kind of like their second best player in terms of DraftKings scoring. He has decent kill death ratio, decent engagements and stuff. So I'm fine getting to maybe Gizmo. He's only 84. That's fine. Maybe 0, but it's tough with these maps and stuff, man. It really is. I could see them being fine. Maybe like these lower three guys, Afro, Gizmo, and Zero. Zero has been playing better individually as of late, so I don't hate it. I just don't want to get there. That's kind of what it comes down to. I'll have some London. I'll have some Afro, maybe some Afro and Gizmo. I doubt I'm going to end up having any 3 stacks of London, though. I'm mainly just looking to one-off Afro and probably call it a day there. So London, Boston, or Boston, LAG. Looking at Boston, I mean, it's been methods, a little bit of Cap, a little bit of Tej. I think that's fine. This makes sense to me. This kind of aligns with how I've been thinking about this team lately. It mainly comes down to methods and Tej. Methods at 84, still a pretty decent value. Tej at 72, pretty cheap, although he's pretty inconsistent and can definitely kill your lineups, it feels. Capsule at 10k is pretty tough to pay for. Again, I don't expect a Bocage in this series, so I'm not expecting a lot of upside from Capsule. He does have big upside. He does show some crazy performances, like a 150 here, I guess 130 here. So we have seen some spike performances from Big Cap. It's just tough at that price. It's hard to argue that he's a better play than players like, I don't know, even Simp, Shotzi, Abizi, Dashy, I think even cheaper. Like, I would argue Scump probably is better than Capsule in this scenario. It's, again, this one's probably going pretty light. Maybe Methods and Tej. That's probably going to be it for me for the Boston guys. I doubt I'm going to have too many stacks for them as well, but they're probably going to be like decent secondary stack options. I do think if you do want to go heavy on like if I do, for example, do like Dashy and Scump, and then I do Methods, Tej, and Afro, I don't know if that's possible. I don't want to build lineups for you guys, but that's pretty solid. We'll talk about team slots here in a minute, but I think that for like single entry or cash or something sounds a little crazy, but we'll talk about that. Atlanta, New York. The only reason that build I just made doesn't seem that great is because of this Atlanta, New York series. I could see crazy points going on in this one. Again, this one's a pretty likely Bocage. We're not going to get Tuscan, so it's not like the best possible scenario, but getting Bocage is very, very much enough for me. Again, the concern here is if it's just a 3-0 and then Atlanta's like way above everyone else. If we look at how Atlanta's been playing, as we could see, it was, I believe it was Simp was the one who was sick in that last series. So they had Prestini come in. They won that series, right? I feel like now I don't even remember who. Yeah, they got swept by Optic. Duh. So that makes sense. Prestini wasn't even their worst player, which is crazy. But as we could see, like, it's been Salium and Simp. Our cities and Abizi haven't even been showing up that much. That's why I kind of feel like the door's a little bit open here for New York. I wouldn't expect Abizi to be kind of this poor for this long. That definitely is some concern, some concern for the New York side because, Abizi shows up, then Atlanta's rolling again, and they're chilling. It's just tough. Like, I just feel like they're a little overpriced here overall. I just don't want to get to Atlanta. I just want to go to New York. These New York guys. Again, these numbers are going to have some bad performances here, but we kind of just went over why Neptune, Hydra, and maybe Paul are going to be my options there for this series. I feel like you got to make a stand somewhere, and this one makes a lot of sense to me. They're going to be super low owned. I don't mind playing them pretty much anywhere. The concern is just the getting swept. If they do lose this series at 0-3, their scores are going to be dead. Your lineups are going to be dead. It's real. There's real concern there. I feel like New York could have 3 close maps and lose them all. That's just kind of like the nature of this one. So if you have New York players and you're watching this series, all you're hoping for is that New York win a map and you get to play all 4 maps and you have some decent scores. Like, The baseline for like decent scores, I think, in this Call of Duty is like 100, like 110 ish. Like you could definitely get 110, I think, from like Hydra and Neptune, and that enables you so much more everywhere else. Then again, we kind of just talked about Optic, Texas versus Seattle here. Um, Looking at how they've been playing lately, it's been a lot of dashy. Scump's been stepping up pretty well. Shotzi feels like he's been like in a little bit of a slump, but I mean, it's slump for Shotzi is like a lot of other players like ideal situation. Like he's still a what is this? The top 10? What is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So he's been the 12th best player. Whoa, in the league. Like that's kind of what we're talking about for a slump for Shotzi. So I expect him to turn it around. 10K's kind of tough, so it definitely would be like Dashy and Scump for me for Optic. Third man in would be Shotzi, but I'm fine with loading in Dashy Scump. I mean, I do think they are going to get a Bocage, and if we look at the player map stats here, like Shotzi's still been fine on the Bocage lately. I do believe. We do look at Shotzi. Yeah. I mean, 34 and 31. I mean, it's not as great as it's been. He's had two mediocre performances lately, but these definitely feel like a little bit more of like an outlier thing. We check this Florida versus Optic one. This was like a pretty close one. There's a lot of Scump, Dashy, Shotzi was kind of there. So I mean, it's kind of fine still. I mean, that's kind of what we just talked about, but I'm still fine with that. I think Shotzi's upside is fine. Maybe Shotzi's the one that's a little bit overlooked because people want to play Atlanta. I'm not sure, but I'm fine with going Shotzi third man in for sure. Um, yeah, I think that kind of concludes kind of what everything I wanted to talk about today. Looking pretty excited for this one. I think tomorrow will be a little bit more exciting. Again, we do have a good bit of like pretty decent sized favorites here. I do look forward to these matches. I think there's going to be some good stuff coming out of this one. I do think Optic versus Seattle is a little close, but again, the map set's too juicy there. Um, Seattle's pretty cheap. I don't know. Seattle's not as cheap as New York, and I'd be fine with going to the New York side in terms of like I don't know if I'd want to stack, but I'm fine with going New York. Again, I don't necessarily pick New York to like win the series. I just think they can do enough from a DraftKings standpoint. Again, I think that's something that kind of gets a little bit lost in the shuffle here. Um, so yeah, that'll be it for me today. A lot of it comes down to maps, but I think that's kind of how the way the cookie crumbles here. Like New York, like New York to hopefully make it competitive. Like the map set for Optic, hopefully they can outslay them and put up some big scores. Um, Hopefully London and Boston don't go too crazy. Maybe get some Afro and some Methods or TJ Halley and mix and match. Maybe you can get some Gizmo and Zero. Maybe some Capsule. Don't think I will. But I'm going to take some shots here in New York. I'm probably just going to be full out fade on Atlanta. So if Atlanta 3-0 in a dominant fashion, they look really good, just know that I'm having a pretty bad day, and that'll be my approach. A little bit of a weird, unique one. Don't necessarily typically end up on a plus 500 underdog, but, I'm feeling it. This way I'm leaning in. This is what I'm going to be doing, and this is what I do in the videos. I like to just kind of say what I'm doing, and hopefully you guys are fortunate, and make some money with me. So that'll be it for me today. We'll be back again tomorrow for the day 2 of the major. Again, it's the losers of these series going against the losers of the game, pretty much. So I believe it just goes straight down. So we'll probably be getting Seattle versus Minnesota, New York versus LA Thieves, Florida versus Paris, LAG versus Toronto. And I think those will be a lot closer series, a lot more interesting. And I'll look forward to hopefully talking about those tomorrow. And hopefully we're not talking about any of the other upset teams. So that'll be it for me tonight. I'll see you guys tomorrow. And best luck to you all. Best luck building your lineups. And hopefully we can make some money. I'll see you guys then.